Hey John, how you going?
Good mate, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, a familiar face to a number of our followers.
Hopefully, yes. Obviously spent a couple of years there at Modern Visual, a
Yeah,
couple of years back now.
yeah, and we obviously miss you dearly, but you moved on to greener pastures, and you're now working for yourself. So, did you want to explain to people what you're doing, and just for everyone's benefit, today we just want to give people a lot of information and some hacks on social media and what they can be doing at the moment.
Yeah. So my background is been in social media for probably the better part of 9 years now. I worked at obviously Modern Visual for a couple of years there. And yeah, everything I've done in digital marketing has been purely social media or has had some sort of social media marketing element to it. So I like to feel like I'm pretty well placed to advise people, help people with their businesses. And yeah, I've recently just gone out on my own to do some consulting work, but obviously some more hands-on stuff with my business, Sonus Media. So yeah, we look after businesses' digital marketing needs, predominantly social media, bit of Google AdWords, SEO, brand strategy stuff as well. I think is incredibly important, particularly in a time like where we are at the moment with COVID. But yeah, so yeah, everything's sort of social media marketing and everything that encompasses that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, mate. And for those that aren't aware, Modern Visual ceased offering services around digital marketing, and it's just allowed us to really focus on people's tech stacks and the high-end technology web solutions that we really love. And that's where we can obviously recommend people like John to help our customers out with their needs when it does come to digital marketing. But what are some of the trends you're seeing at the moment? I mean, just to get started, tell me about TikTok, John. A lot of people are talking about TikTok. There's word that it's getting banned in different countries.
Yep.
Is it something that businesses still need to think about?
I think with any social media platform, I think the first question you've got to ask yourself before you launch into it is my audience there? And I was thinking about this before we jumped on the call. Like, you can be everywhere if you want to, and that's totally fine. But if your audience is not there, what's the point of being there? So if you're, for instance, if you're a company that exists in the aged care industry, for example, chances are probably not going to be on TikTok because your audience aren't going to be there, right? So whereas if you were a shoe brand, for example, absolutely, TikTok would be fantastic. So I think, yeah, ask yourself that question: is my audience there? And then you can start looking into it. I think what's happening with TikTok at the moment, obviously it's got a bit of press around being banned in America. There's even been talks about potentially be banned here in Australia as well. I think it's a reasonably okay platform. Its ad product is very new, so therefore it's got its what would you say, kinks that are still.
Do you have to apply, and there's a little bit of a process with them at the moment?
Yeah, there is a bit of a process you have to go through. So it's not like with Facebook where you can have an ad account set up within like half an hour to an hour. There is a bit of a process, and the thing I suppose at the moment that it's a bit of a disadvantage with advertising on TikTok is it's hard to link out from the platform. So you can't drive people from TikTok to your website or whatever it is you're trying to do. So the content purely has to be on the platform, which therefore makes it a bit of a brand awareness piece or versus say consideration or conversion from a sales funnel perspective. So, but then, you've got Instagram where they've just recently brought out in the last 2 weeks their version of it with Instagram Reels. So that's a bit of a slap in the face to TikTok. Yeah, so very similar. Brand awareness stuff. Advertising can't really do on it as much, but yeah, a very similar product.
Yeah, 100%. And is there particular industries that you think should focus more on awareness-based content versus actual ads with an intent?
Yeah, like if you think, and this is like top end, but if you look at someone like a brand like Nike, right? So all their advertising they do is purely brand awareness.
I'm glad you pronounced Nike properly too. A lot of people say Nike, and it really annoys me.
Those little nuances.
Someone sent a letter to Phil Knight, the owner of Nike, saying, "How do you pronounce your company name?" And he wrote back, "It's Nike."
Nike, absolutely. All right,
Yeah.
I'm glad I got it right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, someone like and I know this is a really extreme example, but yeah, Nike would be one of them, where all their ads just are purely brand awareness. It's nothing to do with go buy my sneakers or go down to wherever to buy Platypus shoes to buy our Nike shoes. It's just all brand awareness. And then they have cut through through the market, and the way they position themselves in those ads with people wearing the Nikes and et cetera, in different situations. You then look at that ad and you go, wow, I can see myself wearing them, or I would love to be that person who's wearing them, et cetera, et cetera. Then it drives you to go buy the product. And why did that happen? Because they produced a really good ad at the awareness stage. And then that was basically the push for you to go into the store or wherever and buy your shoes. So that would be one example. But there's plenty others out there that probably only need to have it as an awareness piece versus consideration or acquisition.
It's fair to say as well, like these big companies, they've done so much work over the years to establish themselves as well. They've spent millions, if not billions, on advertising over the time, and that all contributes now to the effort they're putting in on modern day platforms like Facebook or Instagram or whatever it may be. You know, they've already got that establishment, so they can do a little push to try and get some traction. And because the brand's established, it's a lot easier for them to put in a little bit less effort. Like I know that Nike don't publish that often compared to other brands. So when you're a brand new business, you're going to have to put in that extra effort to be relevant in front of people compared to a Nike who might do a post every month and everyone goes wild.
Yeah, exactly right. And I'm glad you mentioned that aspect of it, and particularly when it comes to brand. And it's so relevant at the moment with what's going on with COVID and people being unable to access things as they would previously. Brand's everything. And it's often something that a lot of people forget. I always like to use this saying that tough times don't last, but tough brands do. Mm-hmm. And the tough brands are going to be the ones that are going to see themselves through this dark period that we're going through, particularly, in e-commerce and whatnot. And so what Nike's been able to do over the years, I mean, this is not something that just came out of the blue overnight or anything like that, or their success or the example you just gave before isn't something that just happened. They have worked and worked and worked on that brand and changed it up and evolved it over time to get it to where it is today, to being a household name in everyone across Australia and indeed the world. So I think brand is something, even with my own company, when we're talking to our clients, we're always talking about that foundational brand and then how that then translates into marketing for long-term results, which I'm a big believer in when it comes to branding and advertising. Is if you can get that right, well, that's half the battle won. Then it just comes down to what you're offering and how you position it.
100%. Do you have any examples of where a client or someone has had a bit of success with a campaign? So, it's easy for someone to visualize the post going out or the ad going out, but how do you mechanically turn that into an actual sale? So is there sort of like a process that needs to go behind an ad? What does that look like for a company?
So are you referring to like the setup of an ad and then how you can potentially track it, say, on analytics, or is that?
Yeah, that's definitely part of my question. It's also, making sure they've got the right system in place, like whether it be a salesperson or, you can't just have a lead come through an ad and then just sit there for a week because the person will forget who you are. I think people assume that because they've done a Facebook post, there's a lot of loyalty towards their brand, when it might not be the case. You've actually got to work hard to turn that lead into a sale. So do you want to explain how critical it is that people not only do the social media work, but what's in place after that? Yeah,
absolutely. So, and I think that's literally like a customer or a lead journey, right? So we put out an ad, it drives into an inquiry form, which then sends out to the sales rep at a company, for example, who then either takes it on him or herself or passes it on to someone within their team. And then they obviously nurture that lead. There's meetings, etc. So there could be 8 or 9 touch points before that lead actually becomes a sale. So if we look at what I just said then, we've gone Facebook, website, inquiry form, inbox of the sales rep. The sales rep then picks up the phone, calls you, the lead. You have a bit of a chat. You organise to have a meeting. You might have 2 or more meetings after that, and then all of a sudden you work out what the strategy is going to be, and then you sign the client. So, there's 8 steps that have gone on there, and or maybe even more sometimes. Like I've heard and you probably would have said it yourself, being in business for a number of years now, where it may have taken you like 4 or 5 months to land quite a significant client, because that's what it takes. So
we've had clients where it takes years. We've signed someone on for a project 2 years after they made an inquiry with us. It's just how it rolls.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's different every time. I'd probably argue that's probably going to be more of an outlier than a norm, but it's an example of how it can happen. So, yeah, look, I think if we go back to the Nike example before, they might start off with a brand awareness campaign, right? And you see that come into your Facebook Facebook feed. That pushes you into the consideration phase, which for me, if I'm going to go buy a pair of shoes, I then start looking at where can I buy Nikes near me. That might be Google. So there's 2 touch points. The third one then is I find my store that's local to me. I go into that store, I buy it, or I go online and I buy it. So let's just say it's online. So we go to the website, I buy it. Yep, that's cool. It gets sent to me. That's a 4th touch point. And then there might be a follow-up after that, where it might be an email a couple of weeks later where there's a review. So that's, 4 or 5 touch points there for me to become a customer of that particular store. It started off with an indirect ad from Nike that then goes, oh yeah, I need some Nikes, or whatever the case may be. Go down to my local store, or, do a bit of a Google search, local store or the online store, and then there's a follow-up after that. So yeah, and that's just for e-com. If you look at service-based industries, as we just mentioned, there could be 8 touch points. But it's I suppose it's what you say at that in the ad. Like, what are you trying to say? Is there a value add there? Is it a blog? Is it a video? Like, there's a number of things you can be doing just to get someone's attention. And you might have to hit them 3 or 4 times with a blog or a video before they actually click through to your website or before they make that inquiry. So
yeah, it's quite funny because I always sort of look at the analogy of, or even like the situation. If you're thinking of buying a car, you might one day wake up on a Sunday and go, I want a new car. You're not going to, within an hour, go down and buy that car. It just doesn't work that way. You're not going to, you might spend a few months researching different car brands. You might test drive cars. You might be waiting for that pay rise at work before you go and buy a new car. There's all these factors, and that can take 6 to 12 months, even longer. I'm keen to buy an electric car, even something like a Tesla. That's been something I want to do for the last 2 or 3 years. Everything they do from an advertising point of view, or a social media point of view, or a marketing point of view, is all influencing my decision making. Now's just not the time. So the sale they make from me in 12 months' time, that's from the years of investment they've been making in their marketing for the last couple of years. And they would never attribute that to my sales directly. That's just not how it works.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny you mention cars, because one of my previous agencies I used to work for, we dealt purely with the auto dealership space, and the buying cycle from initial interaction with a brand or one of the dealerships right through to sale was 90 days.
There you go.
Yeah. So you imagine the work you've got to do in that 90 days. Like, we were dealing with traditional marketing. So there was a bit of radio, there was a bit of local advertising in the newspapers and all that, much to my dismay as being a digital marketer. And then we'd have a Facebook ad, we'd have Google running in the background, we'd have a bit of SEO on their website, the website itself. So we had a number of things going on in those 90 days where we just had to be hitting them. And typically for Facebook, it was more around the fact that I would probably come in 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th touch point, because they'd jump on the website, they would have a look at maybe have a bit of a look around, they get retargeted either with my ad, or they would go through a Google ad, and then they'd come back on the website, they'd go to Facebook, then they'd see my ad, which would be make an inquiry about whatever car you've just looked at, and on it went. So yeah, it was a 90-day turnaround.
Yeah, and I think this is really proof for businesses that are looking at running social media or have been running social media. You can't run it for a month or even 6 months or even 12 months and just go, oh, this isn't working, or, what am I doing wrong? Like, obviously you need someone there that knows what they're doing. You can't just have your receptionist running social media and expect amazing results. You could get lucky, definitely, but just because someone's a millennial doesn't mean they're good at social media. They might be good at using it personally, but to represent a brand or a business to get results, it's not always going to be the way. But I think again, like the message we're trying to get across here is sometimes it's not a direct return on investment, and it is an advertising service. And whether you're running ads or just awareness-based content, it's all about staying relevant and frequent.
Frequent, top of mind. And look, it's really hard. Like some of those funnels I just described then, like you can't just spend $500 on a funnel like that and expect a result. Like it can be really, really hard because the flexibility that you've got within that $500, respectfully, isn't all that much. Like, so you may have to spend $1,000. And, you know, for small business owners, I've got empathy for that because they go, well, shit, $1,000. Like, I can't afford that. Like, you know, my products are only worth this much and I've only made this much this month. And I've only got like probably $100 to spend on advertising, which is, you know, let's just look at it from social media, which is not much. So yeah, it can be really, really hard. But yeah, to your point, it's a long play. And particularly if you're just starting out, like you might not see results for 6 months, particularly if you don't have someone who is on the tools and working it. To your point, the person behind the receptionist desk, despite their best intentions, their best efforts, even if they've been on social media for a while, it's a different mentality when it comes to running social media for a business. If you run it just purely for likes and comments and all that sort of stuff on Instagram, change that into a business dynamic, completely different mindset. Like you've got to look at, you know, sales funnels, you've got to look at remarketing, you've got to look at all sorts of other things that it's just could be absolutely foreign, you know.
I think, you know, to add to your point that it is a big investment, it can't just be your only source of traffic or customers.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a lot of businesses think because of the size of the investment based on their small business, you know, budget, they think that it's a big hit and it must be something magical if it's going to cost me a couple of grand a month. But ultimately, you'd want to have that as just one traffic source for your business. And it might almost be like the support. I'm not a sports guy. Deep down, as you might know, John, it's you know, the social media typically there to support the guy or the girl kicking the goal. It's not always going to be the one kicking the goal, and that's where you still need the other team members around the person kicking the goal to get the goal. They can't do it on their own, and that's where all these different channels like social media or Google or, to your dismay, TV ads or whatever it may be, they all contribute to the overall success of your company. And relying on one channel is never a safe bet.
Yeah, and if there's one little bit of, I suppose, a recommendation or a bit of advice I can give to that, what you basically just articulated there is what's called attribution, right? So you can find attribution on, or measure attribution on Google Analytics. Facebook also has their own version of it as well, which over the last 18 months I've been up to my eyeballs in terms of the clients I've been working with and even previous agencies I've worked with, where we've connected the Facebook account up to, obviously, but then you get Google, you can get Bing, you can get a few other platforms, and you can really start looking at what channels are actually driving the conversion, but what channels, to your point, are actually assisting it and what influence they're having on that overall result. So you might have 7 touch points and just say it was Facebook, website, Instagram, website, but it was the search ad that converted. You go, oh yeah, cool. Google converted that for us. That was great. We're going to keep putting more money towards that. Or do you look at it the other way and you go, actually, no, we need to keep putting more money towards Facebook and Instagram because we know that there was 3 or 4 touch points in that 7 touch point journey that contributed to that search ad resulting in the conversion. So we need to prime the assistance to ensure that we're getting, because as you know, with Google AdWords, it's all intent, right? So people are actively searching for your product or your service, whatever the case may be. So it's intent. Whereas Facebook, as you mentioned, it's more awareness and consideration. So if you can prime that in the top of funnel and the middle of the funnel, prime that and then feed it into the acquisition side of things. And again, at 7 touch points, there's a bit of cash involved in all of that. You're going to stand yourself in good stead to have long-term results.
And yeah, you're almost grooming people for the final goal kick into the tail.
Yeah, absolutely. And the analogy you use is perfect. And it's one I use as well. I go, assisted conversions are like the guy who gets it from half back in the AFL and then kicks it to centre half forward, and then the centre half forward goes back and converts. The centre half forward in this case is Google AdWords, and then Facebook or your website or your email is the guy who's running off half back and delivering it long. So he's just as important because the centre half forward doesn't get the ball if that guy doesn't kick the ball to him. So
that's right. And you don't want St Kilda based on last week being your marketing team.
Or Hawthorn last night against Adelaide.
I can say that as a Saints supporter. So sorry, Saints, I love you.
Very good.
What are some tips that people can roll with at the moment with COVID? Obviously, we're in Victoria. Australia overall is having little outbreaks here and there. So I feel like the whole economy in general in Australia is going to be quite affected. What are some things that people can do? And this is not about being the saviour to your business, but what are some little proactive things people can do as a business, whether it be social media or overall, that you think, John, are important and could add a little bit of value at the moment?
I think regardless if you're, and look, most businesses have taken a hit at the moment, some more than others, and some have just like completely gone to the wall because they just can't operate at the moment. I would say there's a big opportunity at the moment to build your brand. And what that looks like in a digital world might be video content. 6 months ago or 12 months ago, you may not have had the time because you had so many sales come through. You didn't have enough time to properly sit down and maybe invest in that side of your business. Now, really, there's probably no excuse because even if you are still running, you're working from home or whatever the case may be, you've got that time to start building some of those assets or investments in the long-term future of your business. So, yeah, I would say building brand via blog content, via videos, imagery, authoritative pieces. It might be like a white paper that you could then put up on your website that people could download, or you just put it up on LinkedIn, for example. One thing I was big on when we first went into lockdown here in Melbourne was just creating value for your clients, and there's really no excuse. Like, there's so many people out there who tried to flip their business from what they were doing into now selling hand sanitizer. Kills their brand, but they don't realize it, right? Mm-hmm. So the best thing they could have done, just say they were like, for instance, like my other business, my hiking business, for example. So we couldn't run tours for a while. So what did I do? I just started posting, rehashing blogs that I posted before. I kicked off my podcast again. I just tried to provide value for my community. So when we do switch back on to start running tours again, I'm front of mind because I put so much content out over that 6-month, 12-month period that's dripping in value, whether it be trails or something to do with, gear or food or something like that. People enjoy that sort of stuff. I know that because I can see it in my analytics, and then, it builds brand. It builds me as an authority in that space. Same with digital marketing, same with, stuff that you're doing or anyone really. You can create content to further build your brand. Because as I said before, if you're not doing anything at the moment, or you haven't done anything for 6 months, and all of a sudden tomorrow you can start operating your business again, don't expect any sales because you've been absent for 6 months.
100%.
Brand building.
Exactly. No, that makes perfect sense, John. Look, we'll probably wrap it up soon. Is there anything you're doing at the moment, John, to help people out? Like, are you helping with like a little bit of a consultation, or is there any resources that we can guide people to? And I'm happy to put anything, in the comments with this video.
Yeah, absolutely. So doing some consulting work, I can do that at the moment. Which is, typically 1 hour sessions. I appreciate if cash is a bit tight at the moment, there are people out there who might not be able to afford, monthly working relationships. So I'll come in for an hour or so, can do it via Zoom. It's pretty easy. But obviously, if there's people out there who want that full service, and that's certainly available. Easily can be reached on email. So that's, john.feeney@sonusmedia.com.au. Happy to talk to anyone and everyone, because I think what we've all learned in the last 6 months is digital should be at the forefront of everyone's thinking. If you haven't had a website before, you need to get one. If you haven't done digital marketing before, you need to get it happening just so you're out there, because that's where we're all spending our time at the moment, on our phones and our laptops and all that sort of stuff. So, happy to talk to anyone about anything to do with digital marketing.
Perfect, mate. And obviously you worked with us for a number of years there, and we're a little bit upset when you left at the time, and you were a valuable asset, and yeah, you know your stuff. We know that, and we wish you best of luck in the future with your career.
Likewise, appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity for coming on here, and also obviously, we've known each other for a couple of years now, so I always appreciate the chats that we have, whether it's about business or marketing, which it typically is, and it's always a good chat. So yeah, appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome, John. Well, thank you, and we'll talk again very soon.
Absolutely, thanks, mate.
Yeah.